A word of warning for the rest of the NHL heading into 2025. Don't sleep on Utah Hockey Club. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. 19 plus, please play responsibly. My guest on today's Frankly Speaking episode is Utah Hockey Club General Manager Bill Armstrong, now in his 5th season at the helm of the Coyotes and now relocated Utah Hockey Club franchise, and man, has it been a wild ride moving from Arizona to Salt Lake City. You know, no one really could have known what to expect from this Utah team in their first year of existence. The slate wiped totally clean with their move, a brand new feel with new players, and yet no one expected it to play out exactly like it has. 4 games into the season, one of their top 4 defensemen, Sean Durzi, went down with injury. He hasn't played since October 14th. John Marino, another top 4 defenseman, hasn't played a single game this season, out with a lower back injury. He's getting close to returning, as is Durzi. And then through all of that, as if losing your two of your top 4 defensemen for an extended period of months wasn't enough, oh, by the way, one of the best stories in the NHL last season in Connor Ingram, your top goalie, not only was he hurt, but hasn't played up to snuff. Add in those 3 elements to any one team, even an established one, not one coming out of a rebuild, and that would make for a tough season. Through it all, Utah Hockey Club is right in the thick of the Western Conference playoff chase as the calendar has turned to January. And for my money, yes, full disclosure, I picked Utah Hockey Club to make the Stanley Cup playoffs this season. But for my money, there is no more interesting team in the NHL moving forward because they're going to be in on everything. Yes, a playoff chase. But yes, one of the most interesting teams at the NHL trade deadline, likely as a buyer. And yes, also into the summer as they try and transition from a team that's coming out of that rebuild and going from playoff contender to firm playoff team with hopes of a Stanley Cup contender. What a different conversation that is from 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, if you're a Coyotes fan listening, and I realize how tough that might be, but also how exciting it might be if you're a Salt Lake City resident and a fan of Utah Hockey Club. There are incredibly bright days ahead, and Utah is also one of the most fun teams in the league to watch under coach Andre Tourigny. They've got one of the best young lines in the league, and they're teaming with talent, whether it's Logan Cooley, Dylan Guenther, Barrett Hayton, go down the list. Utah Hockey Club has been an incredibly fun team to watch this year, and also one of the league's best stories. So what's next? Let's dive into that now in my conversation with Utah Hockey Club General Manager Bill Armstrong. Bill Armstrong, we'll get into the hockey part in a second, but just if you could, give us a word on what life has been like in Salt Lake City so far this year.
Oh, it's been unreal. I can't explain it to you. It's from the generosity of the people around you, from just the community to the ability to go to Park City for dinner and see the mountains every day as you're driving to work. It's a great spot, and it's been unreal atmosphere for our players and everybody else. So we couldn't be happier.
Does any part of you miss the sun and warmth of Arizona?
Our dogs do. They hate the snow. They'll throw themselves in the fireplace. They want to go back to AZ for sure.
That's funny.
We've really enjoyed being here. It's been outstanding.
And what's the fan reaction been like so far? I was at opening night, but I think everyone's just kind of getting used to what the scene would be like. It seems like as the season's gone on, it's gotten louder and better.
Yeah, I mean, you were there for opening night, and you could just see the passion of everybody there. They were lined up for season tickets from the moment we got off the plane. They were there to greet us. When we released our jerseys, they were lining up at 5 a.m. You know, when as a GM, I drive into the rink and, you know, they're already lined up on the sidewalk. It's crazy. So we've really enjoyed that and embraced that attention that we've gotten. And it's been a great thing for our club. I think our players have enjoyed it the most, just the attention that they get when they go to dinner or they're in the city. It's been a great thing for us. And we're thankful for our fans and their enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see. This season, though, on the ice hasn't gone exactly as planned, mostly by nature of some of the injuries that you've had. I don't know how many teams can hang in the playoff race after losing two of their top four defensemen for as long as you have, but yet here your team is as we turn the calendar to 2025, right in the thick of the playoff chase. How would you describe the way that this is all unfolded?
Well, it's not by design that you lose, Dursey and Marino, and then Ingram goes down, and then Bortuzzo goes down, and then Lamoureux goes down, and it's been an interesting part of the transition as we've come in here, and I've really liked the response of the team. We went out and acquired Olli Maatta, who's been a huge part of our team now, and he's jumped in. He's been great for us. But we've had the Stenlins, won a championship in Florida, and the Coles. Ian Cole's been a tremendous, defenseman for us that has weathered the storm, not only on the ice, but also off the ice and setting the tone for our players. And then we were able to pull off a good trade that allowed, Sergachev to come in, and he's just been a huge part of our team. I think he's one of the minutes leaders for most on time on ice this year, and he's just been our guy. From the moment he got here to where we are now, we wouldn't achieve that without him. He blocks shots with every part of his body, and he puts it on the line every night for us. So we're very, very grateful that we have had those type of leaders to get us through these hard times. And I think the goodness for us is looking ahead and saying we've never really seen our full team on the ice. That's something we're excited about, and it's going to come, up here in the next few weeks, where Marino's going to jump back in the lineup for us, and then Dursey's not far off from then, and we're slowly getting healthy, and Ingram's going to come back and play in the minors in the next little bit on a conditioning stint for us. So we're slowly getting healthy, and that's going to be a great thing for our organization, and to be the best we can be at the right time of the year.
What does that say about the compete that you have in the guys that are there that, it would have been easy at that point, I guess, to say, hey, well, I don't know how we're going to do this. We're missing such big pieces from our team. And yet they kind of just found a way to take it to another level.
Yeah, and I think that's part of our journey here, is that everybody's in that locker room fighting, from the Michael Carconis, to Liam O'Brien, who came back in our lineup and has been outstanding for us. It's next up, whether it's Jackson Stauber or net, or Kolenchuk's coming back on the D for us. We've always had guys that could step in there and somehow have impact, and that's been a big part of our team and where we've been able to move to this year. Listen, it's going to be a dogfight. The team that gets in is probably going to be a 1-point difference. It's a hard place to play where we play. Everybody's good around us. It's going to be a dogfight. So as I tell the guys, every game is so important. Every game is a playoff game for us. And no matter who we have in the lineup, we expect to win.
So I want to go back to that, the trade that you made for Sergachev, and you mentioned how important he's been to your team. And obviously he's taken on such a huge assignment this year in particular, but you make the deal. He's had so much success in Tampa, wins a couple Stanley Cups, is a big part of their team, and now a totally new environment. Did you know then that he'd be able to assimilate? Like, what kind of background or due diligence did you do to understand how he might adapt to a totally new environment and a team with different expectations that he's used to?
Yeah, it's a great question. He was coming out of a situation where he'd won 2 cups, and he played a major role. First of all, I wasn't sure how it was gonna, the news was gonna shock him, whether he was going to be able to kind of adjust to just the news itself that he'd been traded, and he handled it like such a pro. And then when he saw the setup in Utah, he saw the ownership group, he was able to see some of the players and kind of study our team. You could see his excitement grow, and that's gone from the moment he's arrived, that enthusiasm to help our club achieve, and knowing that, hey, he's going to be our guy. He's our number one D-man going in back there. He's going to run the show. He wanted that responsibility, and he wanted to be able to be that guy that could go in there. And so I got to give, he's a pro's pro. From the moment he's gotten here to now, it's been an unreal experience to have him on our team. And he with him back there, you take a look at what he's done offensively, and that's a great thing. But how good he is defensively, he's a master, and he's really helped our club grow.
So a transaction of a different magnitude, and I think one that's flown under the radar, and perhaps I think one of the sneaky, really good additions of the last 10 months, 12 months in the NHL as a whole, has been Olli Maatta. You lose those defensemen that we talked about, and you want to do something to help your team. Was it difficult for you at that moment in time to maybe not swing bigger and say, hey, you know what, we can go out right now and add a top 4 defenseman, but you decided to maybe on some people's list check down, and yet Maatta has been exactly what you could have asked for and probably even more.
Yeah, we had studied Maatta in the summer. That was somebody that we had, done a deep dive into. So we kind of understood, who he was, and we, when you bring a player in, you never know if they're going to achieve to those standards. And he's overachieved, and played in huge amount of minutes for us. And he's just been so strong defensively, and he's been just a pillar for us in the moments that we've needed him when we had 4 defensemen go down. So it's been a blessing for us to have him. He's kind of one of those guys that he's a pro's pro. He's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. When you bring those guys on board, it just adds to our fight and our experience level on the backside. And he's been a huge part of why we've been able to hang in to this spot and be competitive and be chasing a playoff spot.
What made you study him? I mean, he's played almost 700 games to that point. You mentioned his resume, has the cups, but he's not a guy that a lot of people talk about. So why did you guys decide to do the deep dive? Like, what stood out to your group that said, hey, this guy potentially could be a fit?
Well, at the time, it was before we had, we had landed all our defensemen. I think we had 1D signed, so we were going
casting a wide net.
Yeah, we were casting a wide net, and we were studying everything that, how could this fit? And our area pro scouts have a big, like, hey, this guy would fit here, this guy would fit here, and they raved about him. And I had known him since he played in London, and been a big fan of just his character and how hard he works at the game. And that's somebody that we not only thought on the ice he'd be a great fit for us, but we've got a lot of young players here. And when you have a pro's pro like that, hey, he's warming up the right way after the game. He's nutrition wise, he's resting, he's working out the right way. He's a leader. We want those type of guys in Utah to help form our culture, to bring a championship culture to Utah. And he was a big part of that. We'd known that in the summer. When he became available, we chased him as hard as we could, and it just so happened we were banged up at the time, and so when he came in there, he had a major role with us, and he hasn't looked back since he's joined us.
Will you look to re-sign him?
Wow, that's a trick. I could say this. It's on the docket. Because we're going into our pro meeting, so that's something we're going to discuss as we move forward here. But he's certainly earned that right to be talked about and to be re-signed. He's been a big part of our organization so far.
So as you were talking about him, it made me wonder about the idea of setting proper expectations when you go to acquire a player. It feels like, anytime a new guy is brought in, whether it's the coaching staff or whatever the management thinks of a particular player, that sometimes some of that gets lost in translation and a guy's asked to either do too much or put in roles that he's probably not suited for. How much a part of that process as you've built your team have expectations been sort of crystallized into the messaging in all of the conversations that you're having with your scouts, your other management group in terms of your front office and assistant GMs, but also then your coaching staff?
Yeah, and those are steps as you get better, the expectations get higher. And every time you're bringing a player into your marketplace, you're creating essentially a better team, and then the expectations go even higher. So we've tried to work, with our fan base and be transparent with them and say, listen, this is where we are. We're the 4th year in the rebuild. Yes, we're adding these guys, but and I've always used the example, you plant a tree, you give it nutrition, you water, you give it sunshine. It's only going to grow so fast. And Logan Cooley and the Dylan Gunthers of the world and the Kesselrings, they're young players. And it's, if you look at, Florida, for example, on the backside, they win. All their D-men were over 28. And it's a reality in the NHL. You need that type of experience to go down the stretch in those wars. And so we've added a little bit of that, but at the same time, expectations can't get too far out of whack when you add one player. And we've tried to be very transparent with our fan base and let them know, hey, listen, we're still in the rebuild. We're in year 4. We've added a few more players. It makes us more competitive. But at the end of the day, the majority of our players are young. I think we're the 4th or 5th youngest team in the National Hockey League every single night. And you can't get away from that. But what we can do is add great players like Olli to our culture and help us be more competitive. And let's see what we can chase here in the second half.
Okay, so one of the other things that hasn't gone exactly according to plan has been your goaltending situation.
Yeah.
Connor Ingram was so good last year, one of the true best stories in the NHL. You
Yeah.
mentioned the injury, and his play when he has been in hasn't been up to that same level.
Yeah.
But then Karel Vejmelka has been the guy that we saw a few years ago that was lighting it up. How has this all unfolded? It probably speaks to the, fickle nature of the position itself, but for Vejmelka to pick your team up when Ingram has struggled a bit at times.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of having two really good goaltenders. If you look at all the goaltenders that come into the NHL that sign and make it, it's an up and down roller coaster every single year. Great year, bad year, medium year, great year, and it's like you talked about. It's a fickle position, and so we were lucky enough that Veggie was able to come in and just take a hold of it and just run with the ball. And that doesn't mean we don't have plans for Ingy, or Ingy's not going to be a big part of our us down the road. But it gave him a time to reset, heal his injury. Now he's going to come back in here in the next little bit. But I love the fact that we have two really good goaltenders. We actually have three, because Jackson Staubers jumped into, and he's done an incredible job for us here in Utah and cranked out some wins for us. So the goaltender position, you can never have enough good ones, but Veggie has been outstanding for us, and he was a pro's pro at the start of the year. He didn't play very much, and he just got better every day in practice and earned his start and ran with the ball. So it's nice to have two. I think we're fortunate to have two, and it's been a good. It's given us a chance to chase the playoffs.
Neither one of those guys under contract for next year, so I'll ask you the same question. What are your plans for your goaltending for next year?
Well, I'm going to answer the same way. We're going into meetings, Frank. You're going to have to talk to me in a couple of weeks, and I can give you a better outline of where we're going with that. But, he's definitely earned that right to be talked about, to be re-signed, and he's a big part of our organization. And if you ever get a chance to meet him, he's just an incredible human being for what he gives off the ice. And not only that, but on the ice, he's a pro's pro too. So we're very fortunate to have both him and Ingram in our organization.
Okay, I'll make sure I'll follow up with you.
I know you will.
Yeah, I will. I don't let that slip through the cracks. How has Clayton Keller handled the captaincy?
Him and I have a pretty good relationship. I've watched him pretty much since he's been in Pee Wee, all the way through. And as I told him when he accepted the captaincy position, I said, listen, it takes a little bit of time, whether you're a GM or you're a head scout or your assistant GM, to kind of grow into that role and be comfortable in your skin in all situations. And, he's done a wonderful job at it. He was ready for it. He has an underlying confidence about himself and his leadership. And he's got a lot of support from the Ian Coles of the world to the Sergachevs to the Lawson Krauses. He's got great people around him to help him grow and become the best leader he can possibly be. And it's a tricky position because he's also a point getter too. So, it's for him, he's got to do the right thing on the ice and sometimes lead by scoring that big goal or making the play at the right time. But he has been one of our driving forces in this organization. And he was a prime example. When he got injured, he never missed a game. He was right back in it, and he walked with a limp, but he could skate perfectly fine. And he had his best year of his career. So he's an incredible player to have that leads by example. And he's only getting better. He's a young man at 26. So he's certainly somebody that's still young and developing too.
You mentioned some of the other young players that you have: Cooley, Gunther, Kesselring. Just going to open the floor to you in terms of maybe even not one of them. Is there one of your other young guys that maybe is a little bit off the radar that's jumped out to you in terms of some growth that we've seen so far this year?
Well, Josh Jones had a good start down there in Tucson too. He's been really good in Tucson, leading them every single night in the fight. And he's going to be a player that at some point in time earns an NHL job with us. He's been great down in the minors for us, but also Artem Duda. He's a young D-man that's been amazing down there for us in Tucson too. And he's pushing to get to the NHL. So we're at the point where I want to say it's good times in our organization, in the sense that some of the people that we drafted 3-4 years back are now rolling in steadily into our organization, having impact at the NHL level, and that's going to continue for the next 4 or 5 years. So it's a good time, to have some young talent that's coming through, and the young talent starting to have impact in Utah.
Yeah, we were talking before the season started, and I mentioned that I don't know that there's a better team more well positioned for the future with the prospects, the cap space. I mean, you're really kind of unencumbered from a contract perspective moving forward. You've got some great flexibility to do a lot of different things. At the same time, you've also got so many prospects and drafted guys that you're not going to be able to keep them all. Have
Yeah.
you started to walk through that process? And I'm not asking for names, but
Yeah.
as you go through your evaluation process of trying to determine which guys are staying and going, because teams are calling, I'm sure, to understand, hey, you've got more than you can sign. How can we get in on this?
Yeah, and listen, there's always going to be, and we did it last year with Moser and Geeky, and we acquired Sergachev with that. So we'll definitely extend some prospects or picks at times. If you look at a championship team in the National Hockey League, 50% of the team is traded for. So we're going to be no different in that thing. But people say, well, you can't sign everybody, and I always say, well, we'll just sign the good ones then.
Yeah,
We'll just
as
sign the
if
good
that's
ones.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and but and listen, I like where we're at as far as developing our American League team is going to be extremely young next year, coming through the door, but exciting because there's a lot of great prospects and a lot of great talent. I find that when I took the job, my opening statement was, "This is simple: just find one good player, stack them on another good player, and stack them on another good player, and soon enough, you have a championship team." And we've tried to do it with mass amount of picks. We were fortunate to go through COVID in a sense where people couldn't get rid of contracts and we needed picks, so it worked out for us. And now we've drafted them, and now they're starting to roll into our organization. So, we're always looking to make trades and become an elite organization. I think that will take care of itself. That will happen at draft time and trade deadline time. But right now we're in a time of pushing for the playoffs and using our young talent to see if we can get in.
So it's exciting because that led me perfectly to my next question. Because you are in the mix, your trade deadline posture is changing from previous years of your iteration to now being in a position where you can add.
Yeah.
With those guys coming back that we talked about, whether it's, later this month, mid-February, whatever it is, will you be in a position where you can maybe take the bat off your shoulder and swing a bit this year at the deadline?
Yeah, we're always going to look at that. I think that's another good question because teams can't figure out whether we're buying or selling, and our players will work that out for us as we move down the stretch here, pushing for a playoff spot. But we have the assets to swing, and if it's the right deal with the right timeline, with the right age, we're definitely going to try and become a championship organization and acquire championship players. So that for us is something we're going to take a swing all the time and take a look at. Just the same as things we did at the draft. We're going to again try and do that at the trade deadline. We'll see what's available, and if there's anything that makes our club better, we're going to certainly take a look at it.
So you called Tampa Bay way before the Sergachev trade to ask about or inquire about his availability, and you didn't get very far, but you laid the groundwork. Have you been laying some groundwork in these last few weeks ahead of March 7?
Well, normally, when I lay groundwork, nobody really likes my ideas.
But they come around to it. Some of them
There's
do.
a lot of dead air time on the other side of the phone with a lot of my ideas. But, it does provide, other GMs and other organizations an understanding of, hey, this could be available. So they might not like some of those calls. But at the time, things change quickly in the National Hockey League, and at least plants a seed of what we could do and what they could receive for compensation for those players. So it never hurts to have some dead air time with another GM, but you're planting seeds, and that's fine, and everybody knows that's your job too.
Mm-hmm. So plant a seed with us. I'll leave you with this. We just talked about how you are. Your players are going to play themselves into position one way or the other about what this deadline looks like. As we, think further out, 6 months out, 2 years out, the excitement level on your part to be able to kind of get from one stage of this build to the next and then become not just a playoff contender, but then a firm playoff team. What does that all look like to you, and how active will Utah Hockey Club be this summer and beyond to try and get there?
Well, we're going to be active in the big picture all the time, just trying to better the team every single day. That's never going to change. But we're talking about a more mature team that goes in the hunt the following year in the 5th year of the rebuild. And from that point on, we're pushing to see if we can make the playoffs and how far we can go in the playoffs. And that's a goal, and that's planted right from the get-go with our prospects to our veterans in our organization. We're trying to get to that next level. And the one thing I would add, there's always pain. Whether I was with the St. Louis Blues and we got beat out first round by the Blackhawks or the LA Kings that went on to win championships, or you're the Tampa Bay Lightning and get beat 4 straight. There's always pain to come with your group. You have to experience that pain. That's the suffering you have to go through to get to the next level. And that's why rebuilds take so long. And there's a lot of teams that start a rebuild. There's very few teams that finish them because of the pain you have to go through. But we have laid the groundwork for this rebuild. We have stuck to our plan, and we're going into year 5 next year, and we're going to stick to it again. If we do that, we're eventually going to have a chance to win a championship, and that's the big picture for Utah. That's what we talk about every single day, as building a championship culture, building the best hockey ops off the ice, and producing a championship team on the ice.
Man, suffering with a first-round loss is such a different kind of suffering than some of you guys have experienced over the last few years.
Yes. We've definitely, when I was going through the process of the rebuild, I talked to one GM. I said, like, what do you do when you get home every night and you get beat? He's like, you just got to take it. You just got to take the pain and move on and know that when draft time comes along, it's your day. So we've taken a lot of pain over the years to accumulate the picks, and now we've got the players, and now they're young, and now we're pushing to get to that next step of making the playoffs.
Yeah, looking forward to watching you guys dish it out now. Bill Armstrong, so great to chat with you. Thanks so much for your time, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thanks for having me on, Frank. Much appreciated.
Always a fun conversation with Bill Armstrong. He doesn't give you too much, so going to have to be on the prowl for some information, but I think I have an idea of some of the things that Utah has been working on, definitely calling on some of the bigger names around the league, even if the phone gets hung up in relatively short order, as Armstrong hinted after that. That's okay. Laying the groundwork for potentially what could come down the line. That'll do it for this week's edition of Frankly Speaking. Hey, if you enjoyed the episode, give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio-only portion, give us a like and also give us a follow or subscribe. Better yet, even write a review. It'll go a long way in helping our show into the future. Frankly Speaking is presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway 19+. Please play responsibly. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.